Well, welcome to the fifth, maybe fourth, Who Counts live stream. What does everybody want to talk about today? Nothing, huh? Okay, that's a good
No,
start.
I have a question.
Sure.
And Craig, I think this was maybe NGS talk you gave a couple of years ago. You mentioned, I believe, was you mentioned that Fold 3, I think, was being funded by the DAR, and they were going to digitize the final payment records to pensions. It might have been you, might have been somebody else.
Well, I don't know that it was the DAR. I think it probably was Ancestry.
Okay.
But Ancestry is digitizing the last and final payments.
Yep.
They have done, because previously done were Georgia and Delaware.
Right.
We do have some publications that relate to those by Allison Truby Pierce and Catherine Gunning relating to more than half the states, which is a shame, but it'll be nice to get to the actual records.
Right.
And I don't know what the progress on that is because COVID probably ended it. And there was some kerfuffle that I don't know any of the details about with some Ancestry camera crews a while back. So I don't know where that actually is.
Okay.
And I'm not, because I haven't been inside the archives for 2 years, I haven't had the opportunity to talk to anybody about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a project. Say what?
Any word on when they're going to open up again?
They're open now by appointment.
Okay.
So, there are 3 people in my live stream that I don't know who they are. I can't see them. Not you guys. But in the YouTube, I want the YouTube live stream people to come over here to go to meeting. I don't want them in the YouTube live stream. So come over to the actual live stream. But anyway, they're open by appointment. So, and it's just tough going. I'm not going to go until they're open fully again. But they don't have any incentive to be open fully again because being open fully creates a lot of work because the only people that actually show up are actually genealogists. So that makes it, they don't really, it isn't that they don't want to deal with this, it's that they wish they didn't have to deal with this, but they can't afford not to deal with this, I think is the best way to put it. Because remember the difference between a historian and a genealogist. A historian will get a cart of books or a single Hollinger box, I mean, not books, records, a single Hollinger box, and will pore over that single Hollinger box for hours and hours and hours. Whereas a genealogist will spend 5 seconds, maybe 10, because they know exactly what they're looking for, where to find it in the box, and they go right to it. They photograph it, put it back inside the box, and turn the box back in. So sometimes it takes longer for an archives technician to pull the records than it does for an archivist to actually, than it does for a genealogist to actually look at them. And that's kind of frustrating.
Mm-hmm. I do have a couple of those books you referred to, 3 or 4 of them. Don't have all of them, but they're.
Which one? Which ones are we? The last and final payments.
Final payments.
Yeah, I once gave a young adult a computer, a laptop computer, in a day when laptop computers were not cheap, to go and abstract the New York State final payments, last and final payments. And she decided to run off and get married, so I just ended up giving her the laptop, and I never saw any New York last and final payments. So it was kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
Tennessee hasn't been done and North Carolina haven't been done. And I guess it's, in my mind, it's worth it to me if the, Fold 3 puts them up, because otherwise I'll have to wait the rest of my life for them.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to go to the archives and do those. I don't have any more. I have other projects that I'm working on that I've got to get done before I add any new ones to my mix.
The last time I went to DC, I had an appointment, Craig, and the day before I got there, they decided they were going to close up again. So
Yeah,
I went to every museum there was.
Before COVID, in the middle of winter sometime, a friend of mine from Oregon was coming with her parents to go somewhere, and they were going to come to DC first. So I said I would come up and I would, guide them around town, Arlington and all that. This was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, 14 or 15, something like that. And so we got, so her parents hadn't arrived yet, and her son and daughter were coming, and they were staying in some place in Alexandria. Well, so she arrived early because we were going to go to the archives, and her parents could care less about that. Unlike you, Dot, who really cares about this. So we walk into the archives and it's closed because of snow. So I went, well, that ain't gonna work. So what we did was we hopped in my car and we went down to Virginia and went to the Library of Virginia, because she had some Virginia research she could do, and visited with my folks in Richmond, so that it wasn't a wasted day. And then the next day, the archives opened up, so we were back. We drove from Richmond back up to DC and got into the archives the next day. I'm not about to waste a research day. I'll find someplace to research. But I can't wait for them to open up. And another reason I can't wait for them to open up is I run and I hope I will be able to continue to run the National Genealogical Society research tour to DC. And I've missed that for the past, couple of Novembers, because that gives me the opportunity to spend a week in the archives. And I'm not about to turn that down under any circumstances. What state are you looking for?
North Carolina.
Of course.
Yeah. And
Well,
it's
there is a way though there is a way to tell whether they're there or not, Whether there is a way to tell whether there is a last and final payment. And then there is a way to maybe tell where they might be somewhere else other than the last and final payments. So if you go to Fold 3 and you go to the index to the final payments, those are those little white slips of paper. And if there's are you familiar with the asterisk in the upper left-hand corner and what that means? That for everybody else, that means they found it. If there's no asterisk, do you know where to look first? You want to look in Settled Accounts of 6 April 1838. It's a book. The finding is called The Lost Pensions. So you know about that one?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's got to be in one of those two places. There are some exceptions for Virginia and Connecticut, because after I wrote the Lost Pensions book, they flat filed all the records, so all the box numbers changed. So I did a revision, but in the process of doing that, they pulled some of the records out of there because they really truly didn't belong, but then didn't remember where they put them. So I've gone looking for two of them at least that were in that set of records, and I have yet to be able to find them. And I know what I'm looking for. So it's frustrating. And they say they never lost them. I said, then show them to me. and they haven't been able to show them to me yet. But the name of the book is The Lost Pensions. So, I mean,
They're only misplaced, not lost.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, you read my introduction. Well, that was actually that was a good move on my part because I dedicated that book to the person who was the head of the archives technicians in the main reading room. So once I overheard her say to her boss, "Who is that guy?" You know, because her boss knew who I was, and she said, "Who is that guy?" And so I fixed it that when a couple of years I dedicated a book to somebody who said, "Who was that guy?" I'm a believer in karma.
Yeah. Right place at the right time.
Right place, right time, exactly.
And I believe you said this in a talk, so correct me if this is wrong, that if there was a final payment made and there were heirs, the final payment was made to the heirs. Is that correct?
It is until 1867, the heirs would acquire the remaining due, the accrued pension, based on individual state law. In other words, it would be treated as an intestacy under state law, and so it would distribute in accordance with state law.
Okay.
And that would be the state where the pensioner was when they died. After 1867, the money went to the individual who could prove that they took care of the individual in their final days. This is why in pensions, Civil War pensions, you see funeral receipts and medical receipts. That's the individual coming in and demonstrating that they paid for the funeral, they paid for the medicine in the very end, and all that kind of stuff, and then they would get the payment. So after 1867, it doesn't go to heirs.
Okay.
But after 1867, there are really not many last and final payments.
Yeah.
There's still in 67, I think there's still a couple of guys that are pensioners that are alive, but most of them are all dead. But and not most, I mean 99% of the Revolutionary War pensioners are dead by 1867. And the ones that are left are sometimes considered to be pretty flaky.
This one is a widow, and my ancestor was a son, and he predeceased his mother. And I have his probate, and it's not mentioned in his probate. So that's
What would be your expectation as to what would be in his probate if he predeceased his mother?
well, his estate was probated fully, but he had minor children. So
Okay, but the last and final payment of the widow in North Carolina should have been shared among those children's aunts and uncles and them,
yeah,
based on the share of their father.
right. That's what
Or
I can prove his descendants, but it's some of the other family. You know, I don't know what I don't know about the other family. I know some stuff.
oh, okay, well, but you don't have the payment yet.
I don't have the payment.
Is it a last or is it a final?
It's the one with the asterisks on it.
No, but they're
Yeah.
down at the bottom of the piece of paper, the word final may be crossed out and have the word last
I'll have
typed
to look.
in. Go look, because it's important as to whether you'll be able to find heirs or not. Because if it says final, you may get heirs, you may get an administrator. But if it says last, you'll be unlikely to get heirs because that's the last time the pension agency actually saw the person, whereas the final is the heirs coming in for that accrued pension.
Thank you.
I mean, that's what happened. Isn't that what happened with Martin Amos, Dot?
You told me that you looked for it and you couldn't find it.
Well, I thought we found a payment. I'll have to put that on my list of things to go look for again.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll put it on my list. I thought I'd found it. I may have it.
Well, we had a record, but you had told me that you couldn't find the last one.
Well, it could have been what I found was the last one and we couldn't find a final one.
I think that's the way it went.
Okay. Well, if there's a last, there's most times is not a final. Although I have seen situations where there is a last and there is a final, but there's two slips of paper in the file. Like Hedgeman triplet from Kentucky is an example of a last and a final together, and it made no sense. But part of it was they couldn't read Hedgeman's name in the pension ledger, so they made up two cards, one with Hedgeman's name on it, one with a piece of Hedgeman man triplet on it, and then somebody went back and said that's Hedgeman and wrote it in, although the rest of the card was typed. But that's not common.
How common
So
is
that's
the
what.
first name Hedgeman?
Well, Hedgeman actually is very common in the triplet family, but not common anywhere else.
Well,
I
I
mean,
just
there are many.
I found last week that Sampson Pierce Bailey's one of his sons is named Hedgeman Bailey. And I had remembered
Well,
that you're talking about Hedgemans, and I thought, and this was in
well,
Loudon and Fauquier.
well, Hedgeman triplet was originally from Culpeper. And anybody, and I'm not a triplet, so I haven't researched his family, but most Culpeper families that are there at the Revolutionary time period came out of Loudon and Fauquier because the land was cheaper in Culpeper than it was in Loudon and Fauquier. So the sons of people who lived in Loudon and Fauquier were living in Culpeper
Well, these
because they couldn't go west.
people were
I'm sorry,
later, like in the 1800s. Um, his mother was a smith. That doesn't help. So
No, it doesn't. Well, in the early 1800s, I don't know when Hedgeman moves to Franklin County, Kentucky, but it's between 1790 and 1818 because he applies for a pension in Franklin County, Kentucky in 1818.
well, are you assuming that Hedgeman is the use of a surname for a first name?
I have no opinion on the matter without looking at it because I don't know. I've never encountered Hedgeman as a surname, but that doesn't mean that it's not a surname. And Hedgeman is a occupation. It's your gardener.
Yeah, but it's an odd first name, so.
Yeah, but Virginia's full of odd first names. Just ask Littleberry.
Or Greenberry.
Or Greenberry. Exactly. His brother. But
Well, that
you
Bailey
know, there's
family often did use previous ancestors' surnames as first names, like Pierce Bailey was descended from
Sure.
William Pierce. So that's why I thought
Well,
maybe
I mean, you look at
that's
my
in there.
name. I mean, I have three surnames, three first names. You know, I mean, Craig is a surname, but it's not a surname in my family. Roberts is my mother's maiden name, and Scott is my father's name. So I had this running bout with one of the few people in my family that was also a genealogist, his sister-in-law. She named her son uh, Ian Cameron Scott and named her daughter Abigail Mackenzie Scott. And I know her genealogy, and I went, there are no Camerons or any Mackenzies in your family. What have you done? And she said, I like the names.
She's
So some
confusing
poor,
future genealogists.
yes, exactly. That's our role as genealogists, is to confuse future genealogists. Um, but I went to her, I said, future genealogists are just going to look at this and they're going to go, what? Where? Come on, where's the Cameron? Where's the Mackenzie? I mean, and they're going to track down Camerons and Mackenzies and create rabbit holes and brick walls like you can't imagine. Now, the nice thing about those last and finals is, in addition to those, if you're going to go so far as to get the last and final, you also want to pick up the ones of the regular pension vouchers also, because you never know what they will tell you. I mean, they may not tell you much, but you never know. Like I've got a guy in Virginia, James Arthur, that when you look at his final payment, he doesn't mention the other two counties he lived in Virginia. But when you look at the pension payments over time, he's in those counties. So you're able to trace him through those counties during the time. Because when you look at the pension ledger, you only see that they're in the Richmond office. And you don't see and the counties are adjacent to each other. They're not, he's not going far afield, but he's in different counties than he ends up in or where he began from. And he also names other captains whose units he belonged to in those payment vouchers that he doesn't mention in his final pension voucher. So it would give you, especially with a Virginia militiaman, this is important because it's so hard to find the militia records. So you're able to attach him to other companies sometimes. It's unfortunately with those payment vouchers, it's just a crapshoot. I will tell you though, that they won't serve those for an individual. They only serve them by year and quarter, by state act, year and quarter. So they'll bring you a box and you'll have to go through it to find it. Now, I can remember being in the Vincennes agency in Indiana looking for a guy by the name of James Hamilton, who was in the regular army and had died or was disabled. Maybe it was disabled in the regular army. So I'm looking in the Vincennes agency for his payment vouchers. And all of a sudden, when I was doing it, I had forgotten that my own third great grandfather was paid by the Vincennes agency. So in going through this box, I found the payment voucher for my third great grandfather, which was totally unexpected. Now, my problem today is I can't find my photocopy or scan. Photocopy is what it would have been in those days of that record. So I'm going to have to go and get it again. So it's on my bucket list to go and get again. But these were just payment vouchers. These weren't last and finals. I've spent a lot of time in the payment vouchers. They used to be out in College Park, but in 2008, they moved them from College Park back to the archives, which was nice. Except that I went out to Archives 2 to look at them, and they weren't there. And I'll dare them move my record group without telling me. I think I can get away with calling it my record group, given the amount of time I've spent in it and the fact that I wrote the finding aid for it, or adjusted the finding aid anyway. Does that about cover it? I think I
No.
covered all the nuances that you're going to encounter.
Yeah. Now, if they'll
Anybody
just-
else got something? Huh? I'm sorry. Okay. Does
now if
anybody
they'll-
else got something?
Sorry,
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say if they'll reopen.
If they'll reopen. Yeah, exactly.
I have a question.
Sure.
Have you had any use for the History Hub through the Library of Congress?
Yes. But the problem is, for me, I don't take the time to look at it every time something comes out. But when I go looking for something, most times I find some information on the History Hub. When I go to archives.gov and search, the History Hub shows up. Now are you sure the Library of Congress History Hub or the Archives History Hub?
Is there more than one?
The one I'm talking about is the Archives,
Okay.
because I
I'm
find
not
the
sure
stuff.
which one I'm talking about.
Okay. I think you're talking about the Archives, but I may
Okay.
be wrong. I find non-federal civilian interaction with something in the National Archives, the citizen archivists and that kind of stuff. And that stuff is pretty helpful. It may not go as deep as I want it to go, but it's enough of the surface is hit that it leads me in the direction I want to go. In other words, it prepares me well for what I need to do.
Okay, you're right. It is support community managed by the National Archives.
Right. Okay. I feel better now because that's the only History Hub I know of. But yeah, I don't go, again, I don't subscribe. I don't think I subscribe to it. And I think a lot of that is because if they do a blog post, I know eventually can get to it if I need to. Whereas I don't like to clutter my brain with a whole bunch of stuff I don't need yet. Because I'm good at being able to find things very quickly. So I'm not worried about it because what they put out there stays out there.
I put in a question and got some responses, and now I get a continual update when things change, and I get
your
regular
question?
emails.
Yeah.
Well, lots of other people's questions too, so I can see what everybody's looking for.
Yeah, I don't know that I care what everybody else is doing. I mean, I don't mean that in a bad way. It's that I mean that in a way of I'm so I live sometimes in mortal fear that I'm going to see something that's going to pique my interest to the extent that I will work on that instead of things that I should be working on.
And
right?
there I am.
I mean, I've written some. There's the Association of Professional Genealogists has a writer's SIG, which I'm a co-founder of, and so I try every year to give them a lecture just so they don't have to hunt up somebody to lecture to them. So I did one on preparing to write a couple of years ago, and this past year I did one on organizing to write, and they are two different things. And I've decided this year I'm going to do one on resistance to how to overcome resistance to writing, because the thing that I have to deal with more than anything else is the resistance to sitting down and write what I should be writing. I don't have any resistance to writing because I'll be writing something else. But what I have is a resistance to the things that I should be writing. Like my War of 1812 Dead project, which is now 37, 38 years old and is 1,200 pages, something like that, should be done by now. And it's just not. I've still got maybe 1,000 scans to go through before it's done. And it's like, when was the last time I worked on it? July? So I must have a YouTube video I've got to put together rather than do that. So, I mean, it's just, what can I say?
Are you avoiding it?
No, actually, I'm not. It's not anything. What it really is when you've gone from 2,400 people that the government says died, and you've got to 9,000, and you're still adding people that they have never mentioned as having died. The excitement of it all at 9,025 is not the same as it was at 3,000. I guess is the only way I can put it. I mean, it used to be that I got really excited when I found another name. Now I could find 20 names and I'm just not fazed by it. It's just, oh, here we go again, and type. But I'm going to have to get it done. Well, there's an author by the name of Eric Johnson in Ohio who works on War of 1812 prisoners of war. And he has published probably a dozen books on prison camps in War of 1812 and other things like regular Army Tennesseans, regular Army Ohioans, assisted in a book on Maryland regular Army and Maryland casualties in the war. And he's got all that done, and I haven't got my books done yet. Of course, I published all of his books, but I don't have my book done. So anyway, laughter's the best medicine. I keep telling myself that.
I found out something today about your November 12th seminar here in Germantown, Tennessee. They have moved it from the big room they were going to rent at this church back to the tiny room at the Tennessee Genealogical Society, and I expect it's because most people want to come virtually instead of in person.
Right,
They hadn't
because
told
when
you
you
that yet?
no, they haven't. It doesn't make any difference. To me, I'm still going to Germantown. Unless they tell me I don't have to because there's so few people and I can do it virtually.
Well, they didn't say that today and what I got.
Well, I mean, I talk to Carla every 2 weeks, so I'm sure that they'll tell me before the time comes. But I mean, the smallest number of people I've ever talked to is 8, and there was a hurricane going on outside in Johnston County, North Carolina. So I mean, I'm really not concerned about how many people are there. I like to talk, so it really isn't an issue for me. And I've got 4 Revolutionary War or 4, not 4 Revolutionary War. I've got a
One's
Revolutionary War, a
Mexican.
Mexican. Yeah, one's Mexican, one is pensions, and World War One, Mexican, pensions, and revolution. I think I don't even know off the top of my head what it is at this point, and that's largely because I'm going to be in South Carolina on Saturday doing that talk, and I want to get that one done before I worry about another one. I'm working on making sure my digital projectors work because I haven't used them in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure I know where all the adapters are anymore. So it's going to be fun trying to locate all that stuff. But you know, I'm looking forward to going to Tennessee because I need more gym equipment, more gym clothes, and I have to go to Swanee to go and get it.
Oh, well, you'll pass by it on your way.
Yeah, sort of, or at least come within an hour or two.
Right.
But anyway,
You'll have to come I-40, I guess.
actually, that's not the plan. The plan is to come from by way of 20.
Well, that's smart
It's
because 40 is a mess.
Yeah, and it's an hour and a half faster to take 20 than it is 40.
Hmm.
So 40 is how I would normally go, but because of that landslide a while back, things are still a little slow.
Well, I hate all the trucks, so we avoid it if possible.
Right. I mean, I went to Chattanooga to look at buying another publishing company, and I took 40, and it was a mess. Such a mess that I came home by way of the Nottahala River Valley and then headed north to Asheville, and took all those windy roads rather than take 40. Of course, it added 4 hours to the trip, but it was worth it. I was so mad that I didn't get the publishing company.
Mm.
But anyway. But that'll be the second live seminar I will have done in 2 years, I guess, the Tennessee one.
Carla's one of my good friends.
Mine too. You didn't introduce her to that new boyfriend she doesn't have anymore, did you?
No, I'm not. I don't know what's going on about that.
Like I said, she's part of a group that I'm part of that meets every 2 weeks. That's actually largely Tennessee or Southern based anyway.
I
We
just
lost.
ordered, excuse me,
Go ahead.
I just ordered my husband's third great grandmother's widow's Mexican War widow's pension, hoping that it will tell me when they actually married in Nicaragua, because there's no way to
It was a
find.
widow's pension.
Yeah,
Then she would have to tell him.
yeah, that's
As
I've
long
put
as
off.
long as as long as the pension wasn't rejected. Is there a WC, a widow's certificate
Yeah,
number?
right.
Then she got a pension, and there are only 2 requirements, well, 3 requirements for a widow to get a pension: that the husband had sufficient service for her to qualify, that she could prove that she was married to the soldier, and that she could prove that she hadn't married anyone else since. Molly Mapp, a African American woman from Accomack County, Virginia, during the Civil War's husband, I forget what his name was, Mapp. Anyway, he died in the war, so she got a pension. And her neighbors ratted her out and said she was cohabitating with a man. And so the pension examiner came, examined, found that she was living with a man, and took away her pension. So Molly Mapp wrote a letter, and I'm paraphrasing, to the pension examiner, said, "Please, sir, please give me back my pension. No man is worth $8 a month."
Well, we don't
But
have any record of that. And these people, she was from Pomerania, and his family had come to Ohio, well, Cincinnati first, from Germany, and then he and his brother were both in the Mexican War. And when that was over, he went to the gold rush and didn't make anything. And then he went down to Nicaragua and bought land and had this, quote, plantation where he would house people and feed them as they were getting off the boat on the Atlantic side, and they would stay there and then go on to across Nicaragua, where his brother, the other one who'd been in the Mexican War, had a hotel before they got on the ships to go to California. And she came through with her uncle. She was an orphan, and they were coming through, and she met William Hipp, and they got married right then and there. And the rest of the family went on to California, and they were mixed up in a kind of Civil War revolution type thing between Costa Rica and Nicaragua, and she gave birth in a hut when they had fled from their plantation because of the Costa Ricans coming in. And then they had to go back to the United States. So it's a really wild
Okay.
tale.
Okay. My first question is, did they become citizens while they were in the United States the first time?
Hmm. I've
In other
got
words,
I've got the naturalization somewhere, but I
okay.
don't
So
remember right now.
the question just is, I'm not asking you to prove that they were citizens. I'm just asking the question, if they were citizens, then one of the places that I would go if you didn't have a pension to find the marriage is the consulate in Nicaragua, because when an American marries somebody overseas, they report it to the consulate.
Okay, well, I'll try that, but hopefully
And
the
those
pension will
consulate
help too.
records are probably on microfilm in the National Archives.
Consulate records. Okay. Thanks for the tip.
Sure.
And where I read all this, there's this guy named Clifford Neal Smith, and
Right.
he took all these German magazines in Cincinnati, and they reported in the northern Kentucky area too. And I guess they got all this from the family. Oh, I'm sorry about the phone ringing. But they must have gotten it from her or the children, because it also tells about how he was killed in a hunting accident in Kentucky. But he translated all this out of and I can't remember the long German title of this magazine from Cincinnati, and it's in one of his books on
Is
that
that
area.
when you remember what book that is? Send me the title, will you?
Yeah, I've got it.
Clifford Neal
I'll-
Smith has published a lot of stuff with Genealogical Publishing Company. The 4-volume Federal Land series he did, some Hessian soldier books he did, some probably a dozen books by the time it's all said and done. I mean, and loyalists left, not loyalists, Germans left, Hessians left behind, that kind of thing. Because the Marburg archive stuff for Hessians only deals with a certain portion of the Hessians, and he attempted to deal with the portions that weren't in the Marburg archives.
Well, I'll remember to send that to you.
Okay, I appreciate it. Because I don't know of any Cincinnati German newspaper translations. That doesn't mean
It's not a
anything.
newspaper, it's a magazine.
Yeah, I don't know that either. So I'm just trying. I mean, we do have a book authored by, I think it's Ernie Toad, on historic German newspapers. But and one would, you know,
But
a lot
that's
of it has
over
to
there,
do.
isn't it, instead of here?
No,
Or
that's here.
you're talking about German American newspapers.
Yeah, I'm talking about German American newspapers. It's definitely an untapped resource because most people don't speak German.
And
But
they don't
today I
get
was
digitized, they don't get put online. Most
right.
people wouldn't make the effort to try to find them, and if they did, they couldn't translate them anyway. So,
Well, my great great grandfather was a linguist from Switzerland, Bohemian who lived in Switzerland and came to the United States in the 1870s. And he lived in Poughkeepsie. And while he was in Poughkeepsie, he published a book called Der Praktische Deutsch. and it went into a second edition in 1898 or 1899. And I held this book in my hands in the Library of Congress, so I photocopied it. And then, of course, it's out of copyright. It's in the public domain, so I reprinted it. You do not want to know how many copies of De Praktische Deutsch I've actually sold ever since I published that book.
It's not translated, right?
No,
was gonna-
it's a book designed for English speakers on how to
Oh.
learn German script. So
Oh,
I've
kind of
actually,
like Catherine Shover does now.
yeah. So I've sold 2 copies. I think one was to Warren Bittner. So who's
So this
who's
is how to read
the German.
the Fraktur.
No, the
No, it's not.
script.
Yeah, you could use it to read Fraktur, yeah. From the perspective of this is a book of lessons about how to learn the German alphabet and learn German, and it would definitely apply to Fraktur.
Mm-hmm.
But it's mainly like current shrift, right?
It's mainly what?
Kurrentschrift. That the basic, well, they don't do it anymore, but the reason we can't look at a German church record and read it.
I have no idea.
So
When I
that's
look at German,
What'd you say?
that sounds more like a cursive.
Yeah,
right?
it
And
is.
this book is cursive. This is
Yeah,
Okay.
well, that's
the
what it is.
cursive letter.
There's current
Yeah.
shrift and there's Sutherland, which is more angular, but still kind of like it. But then that's different than the Fraktur that's used for printing.
Yeah. As I've been doing a lot of work with German women's magazines, and they're all printed in Fraktur. These are from the 19th century, and it's a challenge.
Yeah, I haven't
So
gotten so I can
when are we
read in.
publishing the book?
What'd you say?
Say,
I said, Shelley, when are we publishing the book on German women's magazines?
oh no, we're not writing a book. What we're
I
doing
mean, there
is
must be plenty of gossip in there. Has to be a ton of gossip in German women's magazines that would be worth publishing.
there might be, but I've been mainly looking at their craft stuff, crochet patterns and dress patterns and things like that.
Ah,
But even
well,
the American women's magazines don't have that much gossip in them. Godey,
right.
Peterson.
Well, I've published some strange books. Books on knives, books on a specific kind of gun, books on colonial dress, books on hairdos. I mean, I'm pretty eclectic in what I publish.
Well, maybe I should look at those.
Well, I'm trying to think how I could do a video on those. Don't quite know how.
You
Tomorrow.
can open the book and hold up the picture.
Yeah, I can do that. I learned very early on that if I had to do a PowerPoint presentation of my stuff, it would take me 4 times longer than if I just held the book up.
They get a better picture.
That's why I hold up a lot of books. So the other day, yesterday, the day before yesterday, I realized the Navy's 243rd birthday is Friday. So I did a talk on Navy, not Navy research, but Navy books. And you will enjoy that one. Even if you don't need a Navy book, you should buy one. Only because I couldn't figure out how to not spend 2 hours identifying every Navy book. So I said the discount code gets you a 20% discount on your entire order if you just order one book that has the word Navy in it. I didn't know what else to do because I didn't want to spend 2 hours identifying all the books in addition to the books that I'd already identified to make the discount apply to them.
Do you have any books on the capture of the U-505?
No.
Well, I've tried to get
I mean, I
everyone
may
I
have
could.
it buried in some other books, but I have no books that are specific to that.
Oh, yeah, like a history of the Navy or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I have books that are relate to the history of the Navy and specific kind of ships in the Navy. But I used to have, I don't think I have any anymore. I'll have to look. I used to have stuff on German ships because I bought Nautical and Aviation Press a few years back, and they had like 1 or 2 copies of certain books, and they weren't books that I could reprint because they were full of color plates and that kind of stuff. And that's just not my, I can't print 10,000 copies of a book or 2,000 copies of a book anymore. I just don't do that anymore because they sit here in the warehouse and collect dust. Well,
How
anybody,
much? How much? What's the title? You said it. Your great grandfather's book. What's the title?
Der praktische Deutsch.
Okay, and that's how I'd look it up on the website.
Yeah, or you could look for Beiley, Beiley.
Thanks.
Sure. You just want to fix it so that I actually sell 3 copies of that book. Is that what it is?
I just want to see if it's cheaper than Catherine Schober's book.
Oh, I don't
I
know that because I don't know her book.
well, I bought her course, so but I just like to have it in print.
I'll if I can find the PDF file, Catherine, I'll send it to you.
Oh,
So you don't-
thanks. In
Yeah,
exchange for me sending you Clifford Neal Smith.
I guess. Well, you just have to tell her about it so that she knows
Oh,
it exists.
yeah, she might be using it. No, I guess
I
she
don't
didn't. Unless she's one of the
know.
2 who bought it.
I have no idea because I don't keep track of that stuff. But she might have an original
Yeah.
because it was in the Library of Congress and it did go into 2nd edition. And in those times, my expectation would be that they would do at least 500 for a 1st edition. And it was hardback. It wasn't paperback. Mine's paperback, but his was hard. The original was hardback. So anybody have anything else?
I'd like to follow up on a couple of records that I found in Ancestry that are Maine Revolutionary War bounty applications and Revolutionary War land grants. And Ancestry lists the source of those as the Maine State Archives. And I'm wondering if that would be online anywhere.
I actually believe they are. Let's see what Boxtruck's book says about Maine. The main entries in this work have been taken from a microfilm copy of the original Revolutionary War veterans' land records made in 1954 by the Department of Forestry in Augusta, Maine by the Genealogical Society of Utah. So I would look out at familysearch.org and see if they're there.
Well, I haven't
And then,
found it yet. I can look again.
well, I'm just just type in, look at Maine alone, not something at the county level,
Mm-hmm.
and that may help. And look for Department of Forestry.
Okay. I hadn't tried that one.
But theoretically, and then if Utah, if the Genealogical Society of Utah filmed them, they gave films to Maine, to the archives in Maine. So there's a chance that they would be online on the Maine archives because it was on microfilm, or you might be able to borrow it through interlibrary loan from them.
Hmm. Okay.
I
Thank you.
What's
do
the
have,
guy's name? Is it Bean?
No, Low.
LOWE?
Benial Low.
I mean, it might be better to go to Maine and just go LOWE, right?
LOW.
LOW, okay. I see for LOW, Abraham from North Carolina, James from Virginia, John from North Carolina, Jonathan from North Carolina, Pleasant from North Carolina. I don't see any LOWs other than that. So you're saying that you found reference to Bounty Land in Maine?
Yeah, it was a hit that I got on Ancestry. I guess it's an index to those types of records.
Well, send me an email about it and I'll look for it, see what I
Okay,
can find.
great.
Okay.
when you said that about the microfilm consulate records at NARA, what do I look for to try to find that? Department of State?
Yes. Department of State. Now there is a finding aid to diplomatic records, a microfilm catalog that you should be able to download from archives.gov publication section.
Okay,
And if you can't do that, I think I probably have a copy of it in my library.
thanks.
Okay. Anything else we need to talk about today? Nothing? Well, I guess we're done. Thank you all very much for joining us. Next time, Debbie and Tyler come with questions. Or better yet, just come.
All right. See y'all later.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.